But again, when you're dealing with somebody like Trump and his ilk, you just wonder how they're going to react. But in the short term, I expect dealing with European leaders, looking at the best option is to have a ceasefire with some sort of European coalition ceasefire enforcement force in Ukraine, ideally supported by US air power. Everybody knows that is the sort of gold standard. So unfortunately, Zelensky is probably going to have to get slightly on bended knee that hopefully Trump and Hesketh might actually listen to him there. Rubio seems to be talking slightly more positively than some of the others in the White House. So we shall have to see. But I think that the message that Europe probably must send to Putin and to Trump is, hey, look, we can do this ourselves. Putin, we have the horsepower, the firepower. And if you look at the European NATO countries, the military power they have, we vastly overmatch the Russians. Air power, and armor on the ground, intelligence. And lest people forget, both Britain and France have a pretty potent nuclear deterrent, which, although is much smaller than the Russians, Putin at least knows that if we did decide to use them, it would wipe out Russia, and of course we would be wiped out ourselves. So there is parity there, but that's what Europe must be thinking and very much demonstrating we can do it ourselves. And I think we can. I mean, it will require absolutely 100% dedication from all the key European nations. But let's not forget, since the war began 3 years ago, we now have Finland and Sweden as part of NATO and part of Europe, and they have massively powerful militaries and a heck of a lot of soldiers to be put on the ground. So although it will need to be all in, some of the countries like Italy and Greece, who perhaps have been sitting on the sidelines, need to step up to the plate now as well, because they have significant military firepower. So we must assume that we might have to do it on our own, but we must show to both Putin and Trump that we will do it. We don't need to wait for the Americans. And in that respect, and if Zelensky can convince Trump to do so, maybe they will provide air power to support a ceasefire force. But if they don't, we can do it ourselves. I'm convinced of that. We must absolutely be prepared to go all in here. We cannot afford for the Russians to take Ukraine. If they take Ukraine, then that absolutely guarantees that we'll be at war again in Europe. Now, in order to do that, we need to show Europe, a European coalition needs to show that we're determined to prevent that. If that means putting British fighter jets over Ukraine to shoot down Russian missiles as we shot down Iranian missiles fired at Israel, then we must do that. And the nuclear option, if we need to put British Armoured Division, British brigades and soldiers, along with other European countries, into Ukraine to prevent Russia taking Ukraine, we must be prepared to do that. And we must make sure that Putin understands that we are prepared to do that. And I think when we look at it practically, if we go all in, we can do it. And as I said at the beginning of this, the European NATO countries militarily on their own vastly overmatch the Russians. And we need to flex that muscle rather than sort of hold back, because in this type of conflict, you've got to go all in. You can't